The Sunday roast beef sat in the center of the mahogany table, steaming perfectly. My granddaughter, Emily, sat across from me. She looked like an angel in her blue sundress, smiling that bright, innocent smile that had melted my heart for 24 years. To the rest of the family, my son, my daughter-in-law, even the neighbors, Emily was the golden child. She was the diligent student finishing her master's in finance. She was the devoted granddaughter who visited her lonely old grandfather every single week. But they didn't know what was in the inside pocket of my blazer. "Grandpa?" Emily chimed, her voice sweet as syrup. "You're not eating. Is the beef too dry?" I looked at her. I looked at the way she held her fork, dainty and precise. Then I looked at her wrist. A Cartier bracelet. New. $4,000. I knew the price because I'd seen the charge on a credit card statement that wasn't supposed to exist. "I'm not hungry, Emily," I said, my voice steady. "I'm thinking about a phone call I got yesterday." Her smile faltered for a microsecond, a tiny flicker of panic in those blue eyes. Most people wouldn't catch it, but I spent 30 years commanding destroyers in the U.S. Navy. I know what a sailor looks like right before they lie to an officer. "A phone call?" she asked, tilting her head. "Who from?" "Mrs. Higgins." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "At the post office. She told me something interesting. She said you signed for a certified letter addressed to me on Tuesday. She said you told her I was bedridden and unable to come to the door." The room went silent. My son dropped his fork. Emily froze. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, picking up her water glass. Her hand trembled. "Don't lie to the captain, Emily." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled certified letter she had tried to hide. I slapped it onto the white tablecloth. "You didn't just sign for mail. You intercepted a foreclosure notice for a loan I never took out. You tried to sink my ship, girl, and now we're going to talk about the mutiny." Before I tell you how my own granddaughter, the person I trusted most in this world, tried to steal my home and my legacy to fund her fake Instagram life, you need to understand how I let my guard down in the first place. If you believe that respect is earned and treason should be punished, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Welcome aboard. My name is Captain Robert Sterling, U.S. Navy, retired. For 30 decades, I lived my life by the bell. Order, discipline, honor. Those aren't just words to me. They are the keel that keeps a man upright in a storm. I commanded 3 ships during my career. I was responsible for the lives of 300 sailors at a time. I ran a tight ship, no loose ends, no cutting corners. If you couldn't pass inspection, you didn't leave the quarterdeck. When I retired back to Norfolk, I brought the Navy home with me. I wake up at 0500 hours every morning. I make my bed so tight you can bounce a quarter off it. I raise the flag on the front porch at 600 hours. My house isn't just a home, it's a station. I keep logs of my expenses. I inspect the perimeter. I know every bolt and beam in this place. But even a captain needs a crew. And 2 years ago, I lost my first mate. Martha, my wife of 50 years, she was the only person on earth who could give me orders. When cancer took her, the silence in this big colonial house was deafening. I maintained my routine because that's what soldiers do, but the joy was gone. The colors were gray. Then there was Emily. My son, Bill, is a good man, but he's busy. He's a corporate lawyer in D.C. He visits on holidays. But Emily came every Sunday. She drove 2 hours from her university just to sit with me, drink tea, and listen to my old war stories. "You need to digitize these logs, Grandpa," she would say, laughing as she looked at my handwritten ledgers. "Let me help you set up online banking. It's safer." I resisted at first. I didn't trust computers. I trusted paper. I trusted ink. But Emily was persuasive. She was smart. She was studying finance, after all. "The world is changing, Captain," she would say, using my rank just to make me smile. "Let me guard your flank." So I let her in. I gave her the passwords. I let her set up the auto pay for the utilities. I watched her tapping away on my iPad, explaining encryption and two-factor authentication. I was proud of her. I thought she was sharp. I thought she was protecting me. For 2 years, she was the light of my life. She filled the empty chair at the dining table. I bragged about her to the guys at the VFW hall. My granddaughter is a financial wizard, I'd tell them. She runs a tight ship. I didn't realize that while I was watching the perimeter, the enemy was already in the Combat Information Center. The betrayal didn't happen overnight. It was a slow leak, a drip, drip, drip that I missed because I was too busy admiring the paint job she was putting over the rust. But the hole breached last Tuesday, and it wasn't a radar blip that alerted me. It was Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins runs the local post office branch on 4th Street. She's been there since the Reagan administration. She knows everyone, and she follows protocol to the letter. We get along because we speak the same language, rules. It was 1400 hours. I had just returned from my 5-mile walk. I felt good, strong. My phone rang. "Captain Sterling," I answered. "Robert?" It was Mrs. Higgins. She sounded concerned. "Worried? Why, Margaret?" "Well, your granddaughter came in this morning to pick up your certified mail, the restricted delivery item, the one from the Sunset Lending Group." I frowned. I didn't have any business with a lending group, and I certainly didn't authorize anyone to pick up my mail. "I didn't send her, Margaret," I said, grabbing a pen. "That's odd," she said in a voice that dropped to a whisper. "She had your ID, Robert, and she told me you were bedridden. She said you were on heavy pain medication and unable to come to the door." I stood in my kitchen, dripping sweat from my workout. Bedridden? Pain medication? That was the word she used. She had painted a picture of a sentinel, invalid grandfather to a federal employee to intercept my mail. I didn't panic. Panic gets you killed in combat. I went into operational mode. I changed out of my sweats. I put on my service khakis and a button-down shirt. I drove my 2015 Silverado down to the post office. It was a Saturday, but the lobby was still open. Mrs. Higgins was behind the counter, sorting parcels. She looked up and turned pale when she saw me standing tall, walking without a cane, looking very much alive. "Robert," she breathed. "Oh my heavens, you look fit." "I am fit, Margaret," I said, placing my hands on the counter. "Now I need to see the log. I need to see exactly what she signed for." Mrs. Higgins pulled up the digital signature pad record on her monitor. She turned to the screen. There it was, Robert Sterling. The signature was a little shaky, just enough to look like an old man's scrawl. It wasn't my handwriting. It was a forgery designed to look like me on a bad day. "Who was the sender?" I asked. "Sunset Capital Solutions," Mrs. Higgins read from the manifest. "Registered agent in Delaware." "Thank you, Margaret." I wrote it down. "If she comes again, you follow procedure. ID only. No exceptions. Do you understand?" "Yes, Captain," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I walked back to my truck. I pulled out my phone. I searched for Sunset Capital Solutions. It wasn't a bank. It was a high-risk predatory lender, the kind that gives you cash quick at 30% interest. I dialed the number. A machine answered. I navigated the menus until I got a human. "This is Captain Robert Sterling," I barked. "I am holding a notification of delivery for a certified letter from your office. What is the nature of this correspondence?" "One moment, Mr. Sterling," the agent typed in the background. "Ah, yes, we sent a notice of default regarding your loan number 8822. You are 3 months behind on payments. The current balance is $52,000. We are preparing to place a lien on your property as per the agreement." The truck cab felt suddenly small. $52,000. I have perfect credit. I have zero debt. I pay my credit card off every Friday. "I never took out a loan," the agent said. "Sir, we have a signed electronic contract, authorized via IP address. Let's see, looking at the logs, authorized from your residence in Norfolk 6 months ago. We also have a voice verification on file." My residence? My IP address? Emily. "Send me the copy," I ordered, "and freeze the account for fraud." I hung up. I sat there gripping the steering wheel. My own granddaughter used my internet connection in my house, probably while I was making her tea, to steal $50,000 in my name, and she used the house as collateral. But why? Emily didn't have expenses. I paid her tuition, her parents paid her rent. She drove a car I bought her. Where was the money going? I needed intel.
I looked at my watch. 1,500 hours. Emily always told me she had advanced quantitative analysis on Saturday afternoons at the university library. She said the Wi-Fi was better there. I pulled up the Find My app on my phone. When I bought Emily her car, a sensible Toyota Camry, I installed a LoJack system and linked it to my phone for safety. In case you get a flat tire, I had told her. She laughed and said I was overprotective. She didn't know I checked it every time she was late for dinner. I tapped the icon. The blue dot appeared. She wasn't at the university library. She wasn't even on campus. The dot was hovering over a trendy district downtown, 10 miles away. It was parked at a building called The Hive. I knew The Hive. It was a co-working space for creatives. Expensive, flashy, the kind of place where people pay $500 a month to sit on a beanbag chair and drink espresso. I started the truck. I parked a block away. I walked to the building. It had floor-to-ceiling glass windows on the ground level. I adjusted my cap and walked past. There she was. My granddaughter wasn't studying finance. She was sitting in a glass-walled conference room, but there were no textbooks. The table was covered in shopping bags, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Sephora. She was holding up a handbag to a ring light, talking into her phone, doing a live stream. She was an influencer, and she was funding her fake lifestyle with my credit rating. I stopped. I watched her laugh at her phone screen, preening and posing. It made me sick. Not just the theft, the vanity, the sheer waste. But then I saw something else. A man walked into the conference room. He was older, slick. He handed her a thick envelope. She stopped the video immediately. She opened the envelope. It was cash. She counted it quickly, then handed him a folder of documents. He nodded and left. Stop. You might think I stormed in there and dragged her out by her ear. That's what a grandfather does. But that's not what a captain does. A captain assesses the enemy's strength before engaging. That man wasn't a fan, and that exchange wasn't about handbags. She was trading documents, documents that likely belonged to me. I stepped back into the shadows of the awning. I needed to see what she was shredding, because if she was selling my data or laundering money through my accounts, a default notice was the least of my worries. I took a photo of the man leaving the building. I sent it to my old XO, executive officer, who now works as a contractor for Navy Intel. Then I waited. If Emily wanted to play spy games, she was about to learn why you never engage a veteran on his own turf. I waited across the street until Emily left the building. She walked out 20 minutes later, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a bright yellow Chanel bag. She didn't look like a student. She looked like money. As soon as her Camry turned the corner, I crossed the street. I walked into the Hive. The reception desk was manned by a young man with a man bun who looked like he'd never shined a pair of shoes in his life. He looked up at me, an old man in service khakis and a Navy cap. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, not looking down from his iPad. "My granddaughter just left." I used my command voice. It's not loud, but it fills a room. She was in conference room B. She called me, said she left her study materials in the shredder bin by mistake. Important papers. The kid blinked. Room B? The influencers usually book that. I think the cleaning crew is about to... "It'll just be a minute," I cut him off. "Stand easy, son." I didn't wait for permission. I marched past the desk like I owned the place. I found room B. It smelled of expensive perfume and ozone. The shredder was in the corner. It was a heavy-duty cross-cut model. I pulled the bin out. It was full of confetti. I didn't try to sort it there. I pulled a trash bag from the bottom of the can, dumped the entire contents of the bin into that, and walked out the back door before the receptionist could process what happened. I took the intel home to my study. I cleared my desk. I poured a glass of scotch. Neat, no ice. I turned on my desk lamp, and then I started the tedious, painstaking work of reconstruction. Most people think shredded paper is gone. Intelligence officers know it's just a puzzle, and I have nothing but time. I sorted the strips. I used tweezers and scotch tape. After 3 hours, the picture began to form. It wasn't just bank statements, it was marketing material. I taped together a glossy brochure. At the top, in gold letters, it read, Sterling Capital Group, Private Wealth Management. Underneath the title, it listed the managing partners. There were 2 names, Emily Sterling and Robert Sterling. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was using my name, my reputation as a career officer, to legitimize a fraudulent investment firm. She was selling shares in a non-existent cryptocurrency arbitrage fund. And judging by the frantic emails I taped together next, the fund was collapsing. The investors wanted their money back. The phone on my desk rang. It was Commander Lewis, my contact in Intel. "Bob," Lewis barked, "I ran the photo you sent. The guy meeting your granddaughter, that's Marcus Thorne. He's not an investor. He's a cleaner for an offshore gambling ring. He collects bad debts." "Gambling?" I muttered. My stomach tightened. "Your granddaughter is moving serious volume, Bob," Lewis continued. "We ran her socials. She's posing as a cryptum genius, but she's funneling the investment capital into online casinos. She's underwater, deep. If Thorne is collecting cash from her in person, she's in the red zone. Watch your 6. "Understood," I said. "Out." I leaned back in my chair. The enemy was defined. Emily was running a Ponzi scheme. She was taking money from investors, gambling it away, and using loans in my name to pay the returns to keep the scheme going. The foreclosure notice I found at the post office was just the tip of the iceberg. She was drowning, and she had lashed herself to my hull to stay afloat. But I needed one more thing, the loans. How did she verify my identity? The bank said they had a voice verification. My landline sat on the corner of the desk. I keep it for emergencies. It has an old-school digital answering machine with a backup recording feature that logs all outbound calls made from the house base station. Emily often used the house phone when she visited, claiming her cell service was bad in my study. I scrolled through the outbound logs. There was a call made last Sunday at 14:30 hours. That was when I was in the backyard pruning the roses. Emily was inside making tea. I hit play. The speaker crackled. Then a voice filled the room. "Yes, this is Martha Sterling. I'm authorizing the wire transfer of $10,000 from the joint savings account." My blood ran cold. I stopped breathing. The glass of scotch slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. It was Martha. It was my wife's voice, the inflection, the softness, the slight southern drawl she had when she was serious. But Martha is dead for 2 years. I pressed play again, my hand trembling over the button. Security code is 1942. It was seamless, it was perfect, and it was fake. Emily used AI. She took old home videos, videos of her grandmother reading her bedtime stories, videos of Christmas dinners. She fed them into a voice cloning program. She resurrected my dead wife to steal from me. I sat in the dark, smelling the spilled scotch. The grief I had buried for 2 years clawed its way up my throat. But right behind the grief came the fury, cold, hard, lethal. She had desecrated the memory of the woman who baked her cookies. She had turned my grief into a password.
The front door opened downstairs. "Grandpa?" Emily's voice drifted up the stairs. It was Sunday, dinner time. She was early. "I brought dessert." I looked at the shredded documents taped to my desk. I looked at the flashing red light of the answering machine. I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and took out a pair of master-at-arms handcuffs I had kept as a souvenir from the USS Missouri. I slid them into my pocket. "I'm in the study, Emily," I called out. She walked in a moment later, holding a box of expensive pastries. She stopped when she saw the broken glass on the floor. Then she looked at the desk. She saw the taped-together papers. She saw the brochure for Sterling Capital Group. The smile dropped from her face like a curtain falling. "Grandpa," she whispered, taking a step back, "what is that?" "That," I said, pointing to the desk, "is the evidence log for your court-martial." She dropped the pastry box. You went through my trash?" she whispered. "I did." I walked around the desk, cutting her off to the door. "And I know about Marcus Thorne. I know about the gambling debts. And I know about Martha."
"I don't want to wait until you die," she shouted. "I need it now. And guess what? You can't do anything about it. If you go to the police, the investors will sue you too. Your name is on the brochures. We're partners, Grandpa. If I go down, the captain goes down with the ship." She smirked. It was the arrogance of youth. She thought she had me trapped. She thought the scandal would keep me quiet. "You're right, Emily," I said, looking at the clock. "The captain is responsible for his ship." I checked my watch. 1,800 hours. "That's why I didn't call the local police," I said. "I called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mail fraud is a federal crime, and impersonating a spouse for wire fraud, that's a felony." The doorbell rang. 2 sharp, authoritative bursts. Emily froze. You're lying." "I never lie, sailor." I pointed to the window. Outside, 2 black SUVs were blocking her Camry in the driveway. Men in windbreakers were walking up the path. "And just so you know," I moved closer, looming over her, "the investors won't sue me because I just liquidated the real Sterling accounts and donated the balance to the Navy Relief Society. I'm broke, Emily. The only thing you're inheriting today is handcuffs." She screamed. It wasn't a sweet sound. She lunged for the shredder bag, trying to grab the evidence. I caught her wrist. The Cartier bracelet dug into my palm. "Master-at-arms," I shouted toward the door. "Secure the prisoner." The agents kicked the door open. They didn't see a confused old man and his helpful granddaughter. They saw a captain handing over a mutineer. That is exactly how I played it out in my head. A clean extraction, a textbook takedown. I stood there in the study, my hand resting on the phone, visualizing the squad cars, the handcuffs, the justice. In my mind, the enemy surrendered immediately when confronted with overwhelming force. But I forgot the first rule of warfare. No plan survives contact with the enemy. And I underestimated just how vicious a cornered civilian could be. I blinked, shaking the fantasy of immediate victory from my mind. I hadn't called the FBI yet. I hadn't moved to block the door. The shattered scotch glass was real, but Emily was still standing there, staring at the taped-up documents on my desk. She didn't look scared. She looked calculating. The doorbell rang again, real this time, 2 impatient chimes. "That's my dad," Emily said. Her voice wasn't trembling anymore. It was cold, flat. She moved with terrifying speed. Before I could stop her, she swiped the taped-together documents off my desk and shoved them into her oversized yellow bag. She grabbed the pastry box she had dropped. "You have evidence, Grandpa?" she whispered. "Who's going to believe you? You're a grieving, lonely old man who keeps a shrine to a dead woman. And me? I'm the perfect granddaughter who drives 2 hours just to check on his blood pressure." "Give those back." I stepped forward. "Help!" Emily screamed. It was a blood-curdling sound, filled with fake terror. "Dad! Mom! Help me! He's hurting me!" She threw herself against the heavy oak bookshelf, knocking a row of encyclopedias to the floor with a crash. Then she tore the shoulder strap of her dress. I froze. I stood there, hand outstretched, looking like I'd just shoved her. The study door burst open. My son, Bill, rushed in, followed closely by his wife, Karen. They saw the broken glass, they saw the books on the floor, and they saw Emily cowering in the corner, sobbing into her hands. "Dad?" Bill looked at me, bewildered. "What the hell is going on?" "He grabbed me," Emily cried, pointing a shaking finger at me. I just found him in here drinking scotch in the dark. I asked if he was okay, and he started screaming about conspiracies. He said I was stealing from him. He said I was a spy." "She's stealing from me," I said, straightening my jacket. "She's running a Ponzi scheme, Bill. I found the shredded documents. She's been intercepting my mail." Bill looked at me. Then he looked at the bottle of scotch on the desk, one-eyed opened just to pour that single glass. To him, it looked like I'd been drinking all afternoon. He looked at my flushed face. "Dad," Bill sighed, the exhaustion clear in his voice. "We talked about this, Dad. You're confusing things again. Remember the burglar last month that turned out to be the cable guy? This isn't confusion, Bill." I pointed at Emily. "Check her bag. The documents are in her bag." "Show him, Emily," I ordered. Emily stood up, wiping her eyes. She opened her yellow bag. "I don't have any documents, Dad. Just my school books." She pulled out a thick textbook, then a notebook. The taped-up papers, my evidence, were shoved deep into a hidden lining or under the bottom insert. She maneuvered the bag so Bill couldn't see the bottom. "He's been acting so weird lately," she sniffled. "He's been obsessing over Grandma. He listens to old voicemails of her. I think he's having a break." Karen, my daughter-in-law, stepped forward and put an arm around Emily. She looked at me with pity. "Robert, maybe it's the new medication. Dr. Aris said it might cause aggression." "I am not aggressive," I shouted. "I am commanding you to search her bag." "Stop it," Bill yelled. He stepped between me and Emily. "Dad, stand down. You're scaring them. Look at yourself. You're shaking. You're ranting about spies and mail fraud. You sound paranoid." "I sound like an officer who found a leak in the hull," I said icily. "You're not a captain anymore, Dad," Bill said softly. "You're just my father, and you're scaring me. We're going to go eat dinner. You're going to go upstairs, wash your face, and calm down. Or so help me God, I will call the VA hospital myself." I looked at my son, a soft man, a corporate lawyer who avoided conflict at all costs. He wanted the easy answer. He wanted his father to be senile because the alternative, that his angel daughter was a criminal, was too painful to accept. Tactical withdrawal. You don't fight a battle you've already lost. I was outnumbered, outflanked, and my supply lines were cut. I needed to regroup. "Fine," I said. "I'll go wash up." I walked past Emily. She didn't look at me. She buried her face in Karen's shoulder, sobbing theatrically. But as I passed, I saw the corner of her mouth twitch, just a millimeter. I went to the master bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face. I stared at the mirror. The face looking back was old. It was lined with grief. Maybe they were right. Maybe I looked crazy to them. But crazy men don't find foreclosure notices. Crazy men don't tape together shredded documents. I needed the evidence back, but I couldn't get the papers from her bag without a physical altercation. I had to pivot. I had to find something else, something she couldn't hide in a handbag. I remembered the recording on the phone, Martha's voice. That wasn't in her bag. It was on the tape in the answering machine. I waited until I heard them moving to the dining room, dishes clinking, voices murmuring. I slipped back into the study. The answering machine was flashing. I hit play. "You have no new messages." She had erased it. While Bill was lecturing me, while Karen was hugging her, she had leaned over and hit delete all. I stood there in the silent study. The enemy had wiped the field. I had nothing, no papers, no recording, and my own troops, my family, had defected to the other side. I walked into the dining room. They stopped talking when I entered. Emily was sitting in her usual spot. She had recovered miraculously. She was smiling, cutting her roast beef. "Feeling better, Grandpa?" she asked sweetly. "Much better, thank you." "Grandpa," Emily said, reaching for the water pitcher, "I was telling Dad about my graduation. It's coming up next month. There are costs associated with the licensing exams, Series 7 and all that." "How much?" Bill asked, reaching for his wallet. "I can help." "No, Dad," Emily said quickly. "Grandpa promised. He said he wanted to fund my startup costs. Remember, Grandpa? You said it would be your gift." She was doing it right in front of me. She was leveraging the senility narrative. If I denied it, I looked like I forgot. If I agreed, I paid her. "How much did I promise?" I asked, unfolding my napkin. "50,000, she smiled, "for the investment capital." "Whistle, that's generous, Dad," Bill said. "I want to write the check tonight so I can deposit it tomorrow. Is that okay?" I looked at the knife next to my plate. I looked at my son, who was oblivious. "We can discuss finances after dinner," I said. Emily stood up. "I'll get your medicine, Grandpa. It's time for your heart pill." She walked to the kitchen cabinet where I kept my daily organizer. I watched her. She had her back to us. I saw her hand dip into her pocket, the pocket of her dress. She wasn't getting my digoxin. She was getting something else. "Here you go," she walked back, holding a glass of water and a single blue pill. It looked like my heart pill, but the shade was slightly off. "Take it," she said. "Dr. Aris said if you miss a dose, you get confused. We don't want you confused, do we?" I looked at the pill in her palm. It wasn't heart medication. I recognized the marking from my days overseeing base clinics. It was a strong sedative, likely Halcyon or Xanax, enough to knock me out so she could access my accounts while I slept it off. "Take it, Dad," Bill urged. "Please."
"Sit down, Grandpa," Emily said, her voice hard. "Take the pill." I used my command voice again, causing Bill to flinch. "I need to use the head." I grabbed the pill from her hand before she could react. "I'll take it on the way." I walked out of the dining room. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to the laundry room, which connects to the garage. I didn't swallow the pill. I dropped it into my pocket. I needed reinforcements. The postmaster, Mrs. Higgins, was my only verified ally. But it was Sunday night. The post office was closed. Then I remembered. Mrs. Higgins had a son, a police sergeant in the Norfolk PD. I didn't use the house phone. Emily might be monitoring. I grabbed my emergency satellite phone from my ditch bag in the hallway closet, a habit from hurricane seasons. I went to the garage, standing in the dark next to my pristine 1968 Mustang. I dialed Mrs. Higgins' home number. "Margaret," I whispered when she answered, "this is Robert Sterling. We have a code red situation. I need you to call your son. I need him at my house in 20 minutes. Tell him to bring a warrant for wire fraud." "Robert?" She sounded terrified. "Do you have proof?" "No," I admitted, looking through the door crack at the dining room where Emily was laughing with my son. "But I'm about to get it. I'm going to let her access the account." I hung up. It was a gamble, a massive tactical risk. I was going to let her log in. I was going to let her initiate the transfer, because the only way to prove a mutiny is to let the traitor take the wheel. "The medicine," I muttered, leaning heavily against the doorframe of the dining room. I let my eyelids droop, mimicking the onset of a heavy sedative. It hits fast today." Bill jumped up from the table, knocking his chair back. "Dad, you okay?" "Dizzy," I lied. I swayed on my feet, grabbing the wood trim for support. Bill caught my arm to steady me. "I told you," Emily said, standing up and wiping her mouth. She looked at her watch. "Dr. Aris said 15 minutes. It's strong stuff. We should get him to bed right now."
"No," I mumbled, fighting to keep my speech slurred. "The money, I promised, for the startup. Need to write the check." I pointed a shaking finger toward the study down the hall. "Computer, send the wire." Bill hesitated. He looked torn between concern and exhaustion. "Dad, we can do this tomorrow. You can hardly stand." "Now!" I tried to shout, but I let my voice crack into a drunk slur. "Captain's orders. Clear the deck, before I forget." Emily's eyes lit up. This was what she wanted, a transaction made while I was compromised, a transaction she could claim I authorized in a lucid moment. "It's okay, Dad." Emily walked over and took my other arm. "I'll help him log in. It'll take 2 minutes. Then I'll tuck him in and stay until he falls asleep. Go finish your dinner." Bill looked at us. He saw a caring granddaughter helping a failing old man. He didn't see a shark escorting its prey. "Okay," Bill sighed. "Holler if you need me." She steered me into the study. She kicked the door shut with her heel. She didn't latch it completely, but she closed it enough to block the view from the dining room. She dumped me into my leather desk chair. I let my head loll back, my mouth hanging open slightly. "Password?" she demanded. She didn't call me Grandpa. The mask was off. "Bravo, Zulu, 7, I whispered, letting my eyes flutter closed. She typed it in. Click, click, click. I watched through the veil of my eyelashes. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. She was in. My first national portal was open. "Look at that," she whispered to herself, navigating the menus. 300,000 in the retirement fund. You lied, old man. You aren't broke." I told her I donated it all, but I hadn't moved it yet. I left it there as bait, a big, juicy worm on a sharp hook. She was staring at the life savings of a man who served his country for 30 years. To her, it wasn't a legacy. It was just numbers on a screen. She clicked on the transfer tab. She didn't type $50,000. She highlighted the entire available balance, 280,000. Destination, Crypto Clearinghouse LLC. She paused. "Authentication code," she muttered. She turned to me. I was breathing rhythmically, feigning deep sleep. She reached into my blazer pocket. She pulled out my smartphone. "Thanks, Grandpa." She grabbed my limp hand. She pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner. The phone unlocked. Violation. Pure violation. It took every ounce of my discipline not to grab her wrist and snap it. Ding! The code arrived via text. She typed it into the laptop. "Execute." She pressed the enter key hard. "Processing. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. Transfer successful." She leaned back in my chair, exhaling a long breath of triumph. "Done. You just bought me a condo in Miami, you old fool. And tomorrow, when Bill asks where the money went, I'll show him the browser history. I'll tell him you have a gambling problem. Who's going to believe, the finance wizard or the senile old man?" She turned to me, smiling that wicked, triumphant smile. "Sweet dreams, Captain." She stood up to leave. She thought she had stripped the hull clean. She thought she was walking away with the prize. This was the moment. The evidence was digital. It was verified. It was a felony in progress. "Emily," I said. My voice wasn't slurred. It wasn't weak. It was sharp, clear, command presence. She froze. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. She turned around slowly, her brow furrowing. I opened my eyes fully. I sat up straight in the chair, dropping the act entirely. "Did you verify the routing number?" She stared at me. "What?" "The routing number." I stood up, smoothing my shirt. "Naval intelligence tracks all large foreign transfers from my account. I set a trap line, Emily. You didn't wire money to a crypto exchange. You wired it to a monitored holding account at the NCIS field office in Quantico." Her face went white. She looked at the laptop, then at me. "You were faking?" "I hid the pill in my pocket," said I, stepping around the desk to block her path. "And that phone call I made in the garage earlier, it wasn't to a doctor. It was to Sergeant Miller. He's been parking down the street for 10 minutes. I looked out the window. Blue lights reflected silently against the oak trees. No sirens, just a tactical approach. "They're here," I said. Panic flooded her face. She looked at the laptop, then at me. You faking?" "I hid the pill in my pocket," said I, stepping around the desk to block her path. "And that phone call I made in the garage earlier, it wasn't to a doctor. It was to Sergeant Miller. He's been parking down the street for 10 minutes. I looked out the window. Blue lights reflected silently against the oak trees. No sirens, just a tactical approach. "They're here," I said. Panic flooded her face. She looked at the laptop, then at me. You faking?" "I hid the pill in my pocket," said I, stepping around the desk to block her path. "And that phone call I made in the garage earlier, it wasn't to a doctor. It was to Sergeant Miller. He's been parking down the street for 10 minutes. I looked out the window. Blue lights reflected silently against the oak trees. No sirens, just a tactical approach. "They're here," I said. Panic flooded her face. She looked at the laptop, then at me. You faking?" "I hid the pill in my pocket," said I, stepping around the desk to block her path. "And that phone call I made in the garage earlier, it wasn't to a doctor. It was to Sergeant Miller. He's been parking down the street for 10 minutes. I looked out the window. Blue lights reflected silently against the oak trees. No sirens, just a tactical approach. "They're here," I said. Panic flooded her face. She looked at the laptop, then at me. You faking?" "I hid the pill in my pocket," said I, stepping around the desk to block her path. "And that phone call I made in the garage earlier, it wasn't to a doctor. It was to Sergeant Miller. He's been parking down the street for 10 minutes. I looked out the window. Blue lights reflected silently against the oak trees. No sirens, just a tactical approach. "They're here," I said. Panic flooded her face. She looked at the laptop, then at me. You faking?" "I hid the pill in my pocket," said I, stepping around the desk to block her path. "And that phone call I made in the garage earlier, it wasn't to a doctor. It was to Sergeant Miller. He's been parking down the street for 10 minutes. I looked out the window. Blue lights reflected silently against the...
Emily shielded her eyes, screaming, "He's crazy! Help me! He locked me in here!" "Emily Sterling," Miller's voice boomed from the other side of the fence. "We have a federal warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud and identity theft. Step away from the gate and put your hands on your head." She froze. She looked at the police lights flickering through the ivy. She looked at me. The reality finally hit her. There was no charm that could fix this, no smile that could dazzle in a federal warrant. She crumpled. She didn't fight. She didn't run. She just slid down the iron bars to the dirt, weeping. It was the sound of a child who realizes the game is over. I unlocked the gate. Miller and 2 officers stepped in. They cuffed her. As they lifted her up, she looked at me one last time. "Why?" she whispered, shaking. "You're rich. You wouldn't even miss it. Why send me to jail?" I straightened my blazer. I wiped the tears from my burning eyes. "Because a captain never tolerates a thief in the crew," I said firmly. "Take her away, Sergeant." I watched them put her in the squad car. Bill and Karen came stumbling out of the house, coughing, eyes red and swollen. They watched their daughter, their angel, being read her rights in the back of a cruiser. Bill looked at me. He looked at the handcuffs in my pocket that I hadn't used. He looked at the man he had called senile 10 minutes ago. "Dad," Bill choked out. "I didn't know. God, I'm so sorry. I should have listened." "Yes," I said, patting his shoulder. "You should have. But you listened to what you wanted to hear, Bill. It's easier to think an old man is crazy than to accept your daughter is a criminal." The legal proceedings were swift. Federal courts don't play around with wire fraud, especially when it involves crossing state lines to online gambling servers. Emily pleaded guilty to avoid a 10-year sentence. She got 4 years in a federal correctional institution, plus restitution. The Sterling Capital Group was exposed as a complete sham. My donation to the Navy Relief Society was processed the next morning, minus the legal fees I paid to ensure she didn't get off on a technicality. The house is quiet again, but it's not lonely. Bill comes over twice a week now, not to check on me, but to ask for advice. We're rebuilding our relationship, brick by brick. He handles the grilling, I handle the stories. We don't talk about Emily much. It's an open wound, but it's cauterized. I still wake up at 0500 hours. I still raise the flag. I still log every expense in my ledger. Some might call it obsessive, some might call it old-fashioned, but I call it readiness. Discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is protection. It's the wall that keeps the chaos out. Emily thought she could charm her way through the world without putting in the work. She thought the rules didn't apply to her. She learned the hard way that when you break the law of the sea, the ocean doesn't care how pretty you are. It just swallows you whole. I'm Captain Robert Sterling. I'm 74 years old, and I'm still standing watch. So here is my order for you today. Inspect your perimeter. Check your accounts, and never, ever let someone convince you that you're crazy just because you notice the details. The devil is in the details, sailor, and he hates it when you turn on the lights. This is John Vengeance, dismissed.